Hello, welcome to Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. I'm your host, Tabitha Ziegler. Hey, so here we're back.
Yes.
So, Mira, what were you about to say?
Yeah, so I had mentioned that I have a lot of chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
My mom does as well. My mom has CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome.
Okay.
The easiest way for me to describe what that is using her own words. It typically affects your extremities. However, it can spread to your inner organs.
Okay.
But it's a neurological pain condition where you are in pain constantly. It feels like whatever area of the body is affected is on fire, being rubbed with sandpaper, and being stabbed with like thousands of needles all at the same time, constantly. She has it in all four of her limbs. She has one of the most extensive cases like her doctors have ever seen or heard of. Causes extreme pain. She has a spinal cord stimulator implanted in her back, as well as a morphine pump implanted in her back to try and help with pain. Neither of them do much at this point. And so she's disabled.
Yeah.
She can no longer work. She was a psychiatric nurse for several years. And like it really took a lot out of her. So that was something that was really big and important to me with like the previous election cycle was my dad voted for Trump the first time around. So did my mom, supposedly. I don't know for sure. Second time around, I know my mom did not. I don't know what my dad did. This time they both voted for Kamala. And one of the main reasons was because of me. They could not vote for someone who so vocally spoke out against who I am as a person. But also, my dad, who is a military veteran, he was in the Air Force for 25 years. My brother's currently in the military.
Okay.
He met his wife in the military.
So you also come from a strong military family.
Big Air Force family. But my dad realized that they were trying to take away access for people who are disabled and realized that that heavily affects my mom. And so my mom can only stay up and fight so much for herself. And so I'm like, well, I'm disabled. My disabilities are a lot more hidden unless I'm having a horrendous day. I also have a nerve pain condition that not a lot of people have heard of. I actually have two, apparently. The first one's fibromyalgia. That was recently diagnosed. I actually didn't know that I had that. I thought everyone was in pain all the time, 24/7. They're not. Fun fact, if you're in pain all the time, you're not supposed to be. The other one is the one that's more rare, and it is just up my face. It's called trigeminal neuralgia.
Okay.
Essentially, there is a nerve in the low center of our brain called the trigeminal nerve. It controls sensations of pain in the face. You have 6 branches from it. They branch from around here to the front and to the front. If the myelin sheath around that nerve wears down, you start experiencing uncontrolled sensations of pain.
Okay.
Particularly, it feels like you're being struck with lightning.
Great.
So when I had my first big flare, it was only affecting the right side of my face. Felt like I got hit with lightning. It was incredibly painful. I can't move my jaw. And on a daily basis, it feels like I have little live wires just tapping along my pain points. Back in October, I had a surgery, and I got extremely stressed out before the surgery and sent myself into a burst flare of the left side of my face. So it's now on both sides. But no one can tell unless I'm in a massive flare that I have that. I also have POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I stand up, my heart rate increases like crazy, and I could pass out. But that's only affecting me when I'm doing a lot of activity. It affects me during the games that I compete in.
I was going to say, I'm sure.
Last June, I collapsed very publicly while competing in the Challenge Great Lakes up in Michigan during an elimination round. I collapsed onto the ground. And I just was getting a really bad concussion that I had when I tried to do another game 3 days later, which I should not have done. But it wasn't until I publicly passed out that my doctors took me seriously and assessed me for POTS. But because I had to have that done, and I started physical therapy because of the surgery I was having, the physical therapist told me I needed to be assessed for the other side of the trifecta. So people with POTS and PCOS, which I also have, oftentimes have a third thing called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is hypermobility. And so a lot of people
I've heard a little bit about hypermobility.
Yeah.
Which star is it that has that? Billie Eilish, I think, has hypermobility.
I think so, yeah. I know,
I know very little about it, but I think that's the first time I heard anything about hypermobility.
So, for those of you who watch RuPaul's Drag Race, the winner of season 11, Evie Oddly, has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder. So, there's you're overly flexible in places you shouldn't be. For instance, my ankles are very, very, very bendy. They like to touch the ground on their own and go back into place. They should not do that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or touching your thumb to your forearm. You shouldn't be able to do that. Chin to the chest, you shouldn't be able to do super easy. You shouldn't have full range of motion of your neck.
Okay.
I thought these were all normal things.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I was in physical therapy and we were trying to work out how to do certain body movements that my physical therapist was like, no, you need to go to a rheumatologist.
Okay.
Which is then when they're like, oh yeah, no, you have that and fibromyalgia. So I have a very common group of disorders that go together. But altogether, I'm in pain constantly. And there's nothing I can do about it. I have to be in pain. I have to go to work. I have to do all these things. But I have people with the same conditions who can't.
Yeah.
And they have to have someone stand for them.
Yeah, it's really, my kids, all in all, are doing great. They have autism. I have one that's nonverbal. But everything else, as far as I can tell, they're really healthy. And I know a lot of people that have autism also have epilepsy and some different things. It's very common for people that have autism to have 2 or 3 diagnoses. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of comorbidities with autism, both physical wise and mental health wise. So a lot of people with neurodivergence normally don't just have one type. So a lot of people who have autism, there's a lot of crossover with also having ADHD or ADD, this is what are called ADD. It's not inattentive ADHD.
Okay.
So there's a lot of crossover between the two, but you'll also experience a lot of people with autism having a lot of depression and anxiety. And that can stem both hereditary wise and a chemical imbalance, but it can also stem from lack of supports and help when you have autism and you're growing up, because you're kind of forced to figure it out on your own. And that can put a lot of stress on someone. That can put a lot of self-awareness of not fitting in can add to the depression. It can add to a lot of those feelings. So there's a really high comorbidity between autism and a lot of different things.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Something that I'm curious about. I have my own impression, but I want to hear yours. Of the people, children or adults, that you've met with autism, how many of them do you think would express extreme empathy for people?
All of them.
Right, so how does that roll into your impression of Elon Musk? I think we need to talk about this because...
He's not autistic, and we need to stop saying that he did a Nazi salute because he's autistic. I'll stop that right now. He did not. That is not what that was.
Right.
Stop it.
So, I am not a doctor. I am not his doctor. But all of that really bothered me because I thought, okay, I've got little kids that have autism. I could see that it would be really appealing for a child that has autism or their parents to have someone that is of some presence that has autism to be a mentor. What bothered me about this is there are people that see Elon Musk as a mentor within the autism community. My impression, like I said, personal impression, is that everyone, children to adults that I have met that have autism, don't behave that way. If anything, it would seem that their empathy would almost be disabling sometimes, and I think that's something that I share. So in my, the 8 or 10 pages of my diagnosis, something that really shone through was my problem with social justice.
Yep.
So
strong sense of social justice and what's right and wrong.
Yeah. But this stuff keeps me up at night. So that's one of the things that kind of tilted the scales for me to have an autism diagnosis is these things bother me on a level that's exhausting. I also have a really hard time understanding people that they don't bother them. So I think for me, how I view the autistic community right now, this current set of circumstances, is we're sort of like the canaries in the coal mine. Like everything in me is screaming. I'm just like, how is this happening? Like, where's the empathy, people? And maybe it is because I have autism. But I mean, I'm just kind of curious.
Well, I know that, there was the whole idea that people with autism don't experience empathy. And that was a huge, thing, earlier diagnoses, like in the 80s, 90s. They're like, oh, well, you don't understand social cues. You don't understand so you don't experience empathy. No. Oftentimes, people with autism experience empathy on a much higher level. You see someone crying because they're upset, you cry with them.
Yeah.
Because you're experiencing that emotion with them. Just because we may not be able to read social cues the best and we see people's facial expressions and try to mimic them because we don't know exactly how we're supposed to be moving our face in that point in time, doesn't mean we don't understand emotions. We understand them so deeply and so profoundly that the moment we see something so egregious happening and no one doing anything, it makes us physically ill.
I agree with that.
If I see something like what Elon Musk is doing and people misidentifying it as, oh, it's a stem, it makes my skin crawl because now you're making it seem like, oh, he can get away with doing hate gestures because he's autistic, because an autistic person wouldn't know that that's right from wrong. We know right from wrong. Our prefrontal cortex does develop just like everyone else's. Just because we have neurodivergences does not mean we do not have the same brain structure. Our prefrontal cortex develops, we're able to identify right from wrong. If you have an autistic child who does that gesture and you go to them and you say, hey buddy, that's not okay. That's a hate gesture. I've never met a child with autism that would be like, I'm just going to keep doing it then. Because they would be like, oh, I'm not going to do that then. Even if it was a stem, it's going to change. It's going to be a new stem. They'll work through it. So it's
I think it's just really dangerous because he's misrepresenting a whole group of people. Mm-hmm. And here now this group is being marginalized and we're having conversations about our equivalent of concentration camps.
Well, the wellness camps, the wellness farms they're going to make us work on.
Yeah.
Those will be really fun to take all of the unmedicated neurodivergent people and tell them to go work. I barely want to work on my medication. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Well, I just think, and like I said, all this being said, I don't know personally a lot of adults have autism. I'd love to. And in fact, if anybody's watching, especially the men, I'd love to talk to more men that have autism, that are older, that could speak on this. Maybe you guys have an impression of all you've seen with Elon Musk. It's not necessarily important that it's Elon Musk. It's happening right now, right? But I think we should stop this out for the future. People like that represent certain hateful ideals and then it bounce back on the community. I don't think we should have that. We should be having conversations now to stomp that out so that the boys that are autistic in our community, which right now, they just changed the number. It used to be 1 out of 36. I can't remember what the new number is. 1 out of 32?
1 out of 31 8-year-olds.
Right. Okay. So she's probably more on track
I
than
saw the article this morning. Because I was looking for the specific quote about how I'm never going to pay taxes.
Oh, right.
Or own a house. Does that mean y'all have to pay my taxes and y'all are going to pay my house down? Because I pay my mortgage payment monthly. I don't want to do that. Take it. You pay it for me. That sounds great. If I don't have to do it. I would love to, be able to save that money and pay for other things like food to eat or, be able to travel or go do other things. But, gotta pay all these bills. But those are the fun things I'll never get to do as an autistic person, apparently.
Yeah, and it's just, at the end of the day, I'm doing all this for my kids. I'm not going to be here forever. the world that I leave behind for them, I want to be better than mine. And I think that is the goal of parenting. To be completely honest with you, I don't know why any of us have kids. I can't answer that exactly. Everybody probably has a different thing. I know I personally did not have my children for them to be a legacy of me. They need to be a legacy of themselves. I hope I sparked some sort of advocacy in them, the way that people introduced it to me. I never expected to be doing any of these things. I just saw things that I thought were wrong, and I couldn't look away. And I decided this is important, because if people don't stand up in defiance of it, this could easily be the norm. And I don't want to see what that norm looks like 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, to where when you blink, and maybe I'm 80 years old if I'm lucky enough to live that long, what kind of world or what kind of country will I be looking at by then? Like, I need to do something now. And for the naysayers, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong.
I would love to be wrong.
Yeah, I hope all this advocacy is for nothing. I would rather operate in advance of it with, not that I want to be fearful, but I see people in the communities that are fearful, and that is sparking advocacy in me. There are people around me that are terrified, like you, that, your friends are leaving the country. Whoever thought that we would live in an America where Americans didn't feel safe walking on the streets, going into stores, feeling that they have to leave their country in a refugee status, essentially, to go to other places? I never thought I would see that.
Nope. I never thought that we'd be the laughing stock of the world. People literally laugh at us.
I know.
But I also never thought that I would see political media come out of other countries that made me cry with support. The day after the election occurred and results came out, there were female politicians, parliament members from across the world that were making social media posts about how they're not standing down and they will stand with the American women and girls, in particular, who are going to be facing a lot of oppression and rights being removed.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
AIDS too, all kind of stuff.
So in Indiana, let me go ahead and get the notes here. It's House Bill 1334. It speaks about abortion. And if I read it correctly, it seems that there is no particular language excluding children. And I saw a photo of a girl at one of these protests that spoke a little bit more in detail of that. And I think she was an 11-year-old girl. And essentially what her sign said was that she would be forced to have a baby before she could even have her first period, and that rapist would be able to have rights to her child. And that sort of thing should bother people on a level that is destructive to their daily lives. Like, I don't get a lot of time to myself because of my kids. But some of the stuff that has been going on, not just with women, with, immigration and things of that nature, I struggle to enjoy a meal. I sit down at the table or on the floor, wherever I'm eating, and I think to myself things like, there are people in ICE detention camps sleeping on a concrete floor with ultraviolet lights, like barely getting ramen, not getting access to medical care in this country. Children being separated from their families and things of that nature, mostly because they're brown, it seems like. We're shipping people out of the country without due process. And then our government's saying, oh, well, listen, my bad, but not my bad. We're not going to bring them back even though the Supreme Court says so, because technically they're in somebody else's jurisdiction right now.
Where they're at, we lost them.
Yeah. Cop out all around. If we're supposed to be the adults, right? When are we going to take ownership? And I'll just say it. Shame on the women, especially the elected women that are not standing up. If you think your subservience is going to buy you street cred into the white supremacist national club, you are sadly mistaken.
Your risk disqualifies you.
You will be betrayed like the rest of us will be. If you think your status or your money or anything will absolve you from the same fate of the rest of us or our children, you are mistaken. If you don't have enough money to put your entire family on a plane at some point, if we don't stomp this out, you will be in the same concentration camp as the rest of us. So I know there are those of you, maybe they're not watching, and that's okay. But I'm going to speak truth to power anyway. Shame on you. Your grandchildren, if you're lucky enough to have grandchildren, or whatever that looks like. I'm not saying everybody has to have kids. That's not my point. If you are not careful with your actions and how it affects humanity, you will not be remembered for the things that you think you will be remembered for. Take this time to search your conscience and your moral compass to truly decide what you want to be remembered for. You can change your mind. You can change your policies. But if you feel strongly about these heinous acts that are happening right now, that is what you will be remembered for. And quite frankly, this is one person, unless I get killed for it, which, I'm not quite sure where this will go. I, for one, will be in extreme opposition until the bitter end. And I will never let you live it down.
Oh, yeah. No.
Oh,
absolutely. I mean, you brought up the fact that an 11-year-old was saying that at a rally. Coming from Ohio, we had a story that made national news very shortly after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and it was given back to the states. Ohio passed tried to pass the heartbeat bill, the heartbeat law, so that at 6 weeks, when you can hear the heartbeat, it's not even a heartbeat. I know that some people are just really like, oh my gosh, it's not a heartbeat. It is literally an electrical pulse from a group of cells. There's no heart. The heart has not formed at 6 weeks. Sorry, a little bit of that correct misinformation. Mm-hmm. But that was an attempted bill that went through. And because of that, we had a 10-year-old girl who was 10. She was 10. I looked it up to make sure.
I'm glad you looked it up because I know we were talking about it earlier.
She was 10. She was assaulted by a man, I believe in his 30s or 40s is what it said. And she, after being molested, became pregnant. Mm-hmm. And because she was not allowed to get an abortion in the state of Ohio at that time, because, she didn't find out till after 6 weeks.
Yeah, because she's a 10-year-old
Because she's a 10-year-old, and why would we know that? She had to leave the state, and I believe in Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
To have an abortion.
That's a special thing because now, Indiana, we're actually doing the reverse, where we actually helped this girl at that time because our laws allowed it. And now we will now be shipping our Indiana children
to Ohio.
So
she came here. She had an abortion. The doctor that performed the abortion, they tried to get them in trouble in Ohio. They said that they couldn't do that. So Ohio's response was to hold in our election season, was to hold a nice little special election regarding abortion rights and abortion access, and also legalizing marijuana. And they thought if they put both of those issues on the ballot, they would have a really low turnout of the younger generations, and that they don't actually care, and so they would get a lot of the older generations who still think of marijuana as a very evil kind of a thing. They're very wrong. We, with overwhelming majority, passed both legalization of marijuana and constitutionalized the right to have an abortion in Ohio, which is fantastic. Until last November, and we got a lot of new people elected, and they're now trying to overturn those things. It's very hard to, because it is now in our constitution in Ohio that we have abortion access. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to make it really, really complicated to access it.
Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of people don't like to talk about abortion, and that's okay. But I will say this. Our nation, from what I can tell, because I'm a student of history and I like to read, we were accepting people from all over because they were being religiously persecuted. We have a very diverse group of religions here. That's not to say that we have not had these same religious groups impact their communities in a restrictive way. However, there's a reason why there's a separation between church and state, because our forefathers anticipated there being some sort of an issue. And the Puritans, in fact, came here, violated their agreements with the indigenous population, which if anybody was looking for a wall, it should have been them. That says a lot right there. But that's another issue. When we start to use our religion in a way that is combative towards rights, it kind of defies certain elements of it, considering that a lot of these religions around the world have some sort of refugee story. Jesus himself was not a citizen of where he was and was persecuted.
Jesus was also a brown man, for anyone who still thinks that he was a ripped six-pack white man. No, he was a brown immigrant.
Right.
I know, I'm blowing a lot of minds right now.
I know.
People who thought Jesus was blonde hair, blue eyed.
Right. Well,
immigrant.
and Jesus also surrounded himself with women as well. It wasn't just men. And he had respect for them.
We should cut off our hands if you touch a woman without her consent. And if you look at a woman and you want to sin, you want to do things that you shouldn't do, like touch her without her permission, you should pluck your eyeballs out. He didn't say, oh man, her dress is a little short. We should be able to, he said, pluck your eyeballs out so you stop doing that.
But there's a lot of things in the Bible that are conflicting. You know, we would not think that it would be okay to give our daughters to passersby in an inn. Prostituting children or having any sort of sexual relations with a child should be outlawed, and there should be extreme consequences for it. Which kind of leads me into my next point. Everybody's so concerned for the unborn. I'm not saying whether you should be or whether you shouldn't be. Maybe that is, that's a strong religious base that you have. And currently, under our present laws, you still have that ability. Where's the opposite, though? We generally don't hear a lot of the men, of the adult men that are raping these children and the consequences of those things. I heard a story recently about a woman that her husband or her boyfriend at the time, this happened in Indiana, was putting like little bits of the day after pill, the morning after pill, in her drink in the morning because she was pregnant and he didn't want another child. So I don't know how many of those pills he put in over how much period of time or whatever. Her child ended up being born with disabilities. I'm pretty sure he didn't have any sort of extreme action.
Likely didn't face a consequence at all.
We can't have both. So, if you feel strongly that human life matters so much and rights matter so much, has to be both. So if you're going to have a 10-year-old that has something like that happen to them, if the unborn life of that one is more important than the 10-year-old life, well, we have to have that conversation of the 30 or 40-year-old man's life and the impact that made on those two lives, right? Because if we're going to say that unborn is a life, right? So 1 + 1 = 2. So now that man's life, that one life, has more prevalence over these two lives. You see my point? We have to start having a larger conversation. We can't just keep demonizing the women.
Why is it that if we have a woman in Ohio right now who they're trying to put away for improper disposal of a corpse because she had a miscarriage.
Okay.
And she removed the remains from the toilet, put it in a bag, and threw it out.
Okay.
Most people would just flush.
Well, how should that have gone? I'm curious.
According to them, she should have, called the police and had EMTs. It was a miscarriage. There was no actual child. But they are trying to charge her with inappropriate disposal of a body, of a corpse, because they're trying to...
So what'd she do with the remains then? Buried it?
She threw them away.
Okay.
Which is, people flush them. because it's just
So how did people find out about this? Did someone dig it out of the trash? Mm-hmm. Really?
Mm-hmm. I think it came, like, they saw the blood and such. I will have to look into the article a little bit more.
I'd be interested. I would be interested in hearing a little bit more about this. I also think
because you have to go to the hospital after a miscarriage, they probably were like, hey, like, well, where's the dad? Da, 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 da. Because some people will bring it in, from my understanding. Okay. Whereas other people, I went to college with someone who had to have an abortion, and the pills that they gave you to cause miscarriage, they just sat on the shower floor and let it take place while they were in the shower, because it's traumatic.
Yeah, no. Look, for those that have never been, this is not something that people don't put extreme thought into.
No one's doing it for birth control. No one's just like, I'm just gonna like go have an abortion today. No one's doing that. No one's doing it. It's traumatic.
Yeah, and people generally remember it their whole lives. Like, you don't need people outside the abortion clinic shaming you if you've been to one. You carry whatever feelings you have, right? I don't want to call it shame. It happened to you. It happened to you. It's individual. Other people that have not been in that position or have not had to be in that position, what have you, like, stop judging people. Like, it's more important, I think, that if someone is suffering, in some sense, that they have good access to medical care and medical professionals that treat them.
Abortions will not stop if you remove safe medical access to abortions. Safe abortions will stop.
Right. And like I said, I know it's controversial. I'm not here to tell you what you should believe or whatever, but what I will tell you is this. Prior to Roe versus Wade, people were doing that in back alleys and people were dying.
Mm-hmm. Coat hangers, drinking, cleaning chemicals. That's where the whole, like, idea of, let me just, like, take a fall down the stairs really quick, it comes from people doing that to try and cause a miscarriage because they could not safely access an abortion. Isn't it I've never seen Dirty Dancing. Isn't that a whole plot line?
Yep.
And that's why he has a different dance partner, is because she needed to get an abortion and it was like a back alley one.
Yeah. Well, and so here's my larger point with all of these things. I know some people watching are going to say, they're only talking about abortion. What I'm really talking about, healthcare, but also it's multi-pronged. You cannot have whatever you want to call it prior to abortion. Like, if we don't want to call it, if it doesn't make it to the point where you would call it a viable fetus, right? Yeah. Because I think viable fetus is like 26 weeks. That's pretty far along. But where are the consequences for the other person involved? That is important. So I'm really, really getting tired of the whole burden falls on the woman 100% of the time. The rapists can have paternal rights to these children after they rape these women and then they're forced to have it. Like, I heard a story not too long ago. This is not about abortion or rape necessarily, but it was equally devastating. There was a couple in Florida. They changed the laws. They were family planning and they wanted to have another child. They already had one healthy child, and something happened with the fetus. And I don't remember if it lost the heartbeat or brain function or whatever. They made this woman, excuse me, it bothers me a little bit talking about this story because it's devastating, but like, they made this woman carry this baby to term, knowing that it was going to die. She had to give birth to a blue baby, essentially, that's gasping for air. And then this family, who wanted a baby so badly, had to deal with the trauma of this. And they've now sworn off having any more children because it was so devastating. Now the majority of their money that probably would have gone into a healthy child had they had the opportunity to try again and have a healthy child is now going into therapy because their whole family is destroyed because some politician decided they have more right over these people's medical decisions than that family. That could be anybody's family. It was like a white, young family just trying to make a family decision, and legislators took their own decisions out of their hands. And now these legislators aren't left with the bag. These poor people for the rest of their lives are left holding this bag and will never get these horrible memories out of their mind. And I'm sorry, that doesn't sound like freedom to me.
I know in Texas, there was a few cases where, because they made it that if a doctor was found to be assisting with any sort of abortion or abortion-like situation, they could have them jailed as well as the woman.
Yeah, I heard that.
That they're having to contact their legal teams in the hospitals before helping assist women who, by the way, anytime a sac of cells, a fetus, whatever you would like to call it, has to be removed because it's no longer viable. Something has occurred. After a miscarriage where sometimes you have to have assistance making sure everything is removed so you don't go septic and die.
Right.
Any of that's called an abortion because that's a removal of it from the body. A woman had the fetus died.
Yeah.
It was not viable. And she was turning septic, and the hospital was not allowed to assist her until they got the approval from the legal team, and the legal team informed them that they had to wait until essentially the mother was at risk of dying before they could act, because then it is a act of life or death, and then they could actually intervene. So essentially it was, we have to wait till the woman is literally dying before we can step in and help her and save this. She's never able to have children. She can't. She's survived. She can't have children anymore. They waited too long.
Yeah, hearing stories like that just make my blood boil. I heard another story. I think it was also in Texas, a Hispanic woman, I think. She already had 1 or 2 children before this pregnancy, and they, also the fetus wasn't viable. She was in the hospital, and they left her open too long, and she got an infection, and she died.
Mm-hmm. So now those 2 kids don't have a mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, not here to tell you, not trying to change your religious beliefs, but I think that we're not just in a political crisis, but in a medical crisis here.
I don't recall the Bible saying anything about abortion.
Yeah, I don't either. But, hey, I'm not here to argue with you, but I am here to appeal to your humanity in general and say, look at all of the things that you had access to in your lifetime. Do you want your children to have options? You don't want your grandchildren to have options? Or do you even want them not to? And if we are going to become a country that doesn't believe in science, that doesn't believe in education, that excludes people, what's going to be left? Because we're such a diverse culture, how is that going to play out in the long term? And for those of you especially that saw that the stock market took a dip, I'll just say that, pretty significant dip. Maybe you have a lot of money, maybe you can ride it out. Most people can't. If that is supposed to be all that hard work, that is supposed to be the legacy that you leave for your children and your grandchildren, are you going to take it out of the country? Have you had conversations about investing the remainder of what you have in this country? And what does that look like? Because, like I said, I feel fairly educated, and it's not like I'm sitting out a lot of money. I'm not. That probably makes it easier to do this, by the way, because I've had positions where I've had more money and less money. I'm doing this for free. I have a full-time job too. I'm doing it because it's important. And I'm really terrified at what the U.S. will be after all of these things, because it's not important that it's Trump. It's not important that these people underneath Trump feel the way that they feel. What is important is deciding what we collectively stand for. And if these people do not represent what we collectively stand for, then change needs to be made. And we need to ensure that moving forward, if people like this do not represent our collective belief system, that we have very strict policies, which I'm pretty sure, technically we do in their Constitution. We technically do. Yeah, there are some technicalities there. But the type of things that are happening right now, we've not seen ever. And we literally separated from a monarchy to form our own nation. So I think we should let that sit with people for a while. Anything and everything that is related to the Revolutionary War, people should be studying. You know, I have to say, like, props to the Bostonians. Mad props to you guys. Super proud. I kind of feel in my minority here, and certainly wouldn't say that I'm necessarily channeling your energy, but I think every state needs to have some equivalent response to the Bostonians.
Oh, I am big with TikTok. Love TikTok.
Boston talk.
Yeah, the moment that the person in charge of ICE was like, we're going to bring hell down on Boston, I was like, I'm so excited to see Boston's response. Because no, you're not. Because I went to school in New England, I went to school in Maine, I visited Boston a lot, I had a lot of friends from the Boston area. They can be mean to their friends, their neighbors, and the people there. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
The American Revolution started there. They threw tea into a harbor, and like it wasn't just like tea bags of it was bricks and like chunks. Like, it was a lot of tea. It was a lot. They were like, we're just gonna like now spite you.
It was the equivalent of millions of dollars of product at that time.
It was a lot. It was not just like a simple little like, oh, like take this. It was a lot of money.
And not only that, they swore off tea, which I think is equally respectable.
Which I find very funny that essentially, rather than tea this time, we have done Teslas.
Right.
And, you know, we got informed by the president of our country that we shouldn't be boycotting Tesla because, you know, and I'm like, well, first of all, most of us can't afford Teslas to start, so I don't know why you think you telling us to go buy Teslas are going to make people buy Teslas. But
I mean, I was super enthralled whenever I saw what happened in Wisconsin. I thought that exemplified what American patriotism is. It was like, oh, no, sir, you can't just roll up in here with your $1 million checks. Like, not to say that the people that got them didn't take it and didn't spend it. And I'm not here to judge you for that. But the populace were like, hold on a second. You have billions of dollars. You're going to roll up here in our space to try and influence our election? No, sir. So bravo, Wisconsin.
yeah, shout out Wisconsin.
For sure.
Love that Boston said that you're not taking our people.
Yeah.
I wish that was a lot more of different cities' responses, or just Stacey Newbern just being like, no. I mean, I will say I do see a lot of like more of like my generation and the younger generations on social media talking about how we can assist in, especially like things like ICE raids. You technically cannot, you can't prevent investigations, things like that. There are crimes that you could commit in like preventing them from doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that like you're not allowed to go for a run at the same time that they happen to be doing things. And there's maybe I just wanted to go for a jog. Like, so in the opposite direction that I happen to know that some of my like undocumented friends are running or going, I'm just gonna take a jog that way. There's nothing saying you can't do that. And it's a big thing on social media of younger people talking about advocacy and advocacy outside the lines is what I'll call it. It's not just marching in the streets and protesting and boycotts. There are other things. There are social media movements. There are like blackout days where a lot of people have been doing blackouts of certain businesses and rotating through them. Target was a big one. Target's facing bankruptcy right now because the blackout is working, because they were one of the first companies to be like, aha, yeah, we don't have to do DEI anymore. And everyone was like, oh, you said that real loud. Guess what? We don't have to shop there either.
As far as I remember, and kind of how I feel is, FAFO is an American pastime.
Love it.
That's kind of how I feel. And free enterprise, you're allowed.
I'm allowed to shop wherever I want. You can't make me go to Starbucks.
The response is equally allowed.
That's free economy, free speech. We have a free economy. you can't tell me I have to spend my money at this place. First of all, I don't have money to spend on a Tesla or Starbucks, or I can't afford eggs most of the time.
Right.
Unless I go to like Trader Joe's, where they for some reason haven't had to increase their egg prices.
We don't eat eggs anymore at my house. I can't afford them. The closest thing my kids get to eggs is going to McDonald's, which I have to say, I'm not crazy about that either, but like you live in very rural places where
Food deserts.
People also don't have a lot of access. So I get it, like you can't always make choices, but I am seeing more people make smart choices and be more thoughtful with their expenditures.
I love that people are they're making jokes about it currently on social media, but while they're making jokes, they are still teaching people. It's like, oh, the old poor introducing the new poor and how to budget. And it's like, oh, well, we don't get name brand we don't get name brand soda. We get generic cereal. But then there's like one of these where it's like, no, you get like this actual name brand cleaner, because the generic doesn't work in this case. And so like it's very interesting seeing that kind of dynamic of people being like, oh no, like we're gonna kind of laugh at you for not knowing how to do these things that we've been doing our whole lives, but we're also still gonna like reach out a helping hand. I also love that people are really I'm gonna call it homesteading. I don't want that to get misconstrued with like trad life, and like we should all just be like out on like the ballerina farm kind of thing. Do not get me an egg apron if I'm asking for tickets to Greece. But like learning how to grow certain things, making bread. The people, like there are so many little like food stands that I could drive around to between like my house and my parents' house that sell eggs. Across the street from like their house, you can get a dozen eggs for $1. And I'm like fresh eggs from the chickens. As soon as the weather is nice enough, and I was told Mother's Day is like around the time when planting should start for things.
Well, my farmer dad, ever since I can remember, everybody followed Farmer's Almanac, from planting to castrating animals and everything. And always in my family, it was like, you want to make sure that the first frost is over. So I think the general consensus in the Midwest, at least, is around May 1st.
Yeah.
End of April, May 1st.
I tried last year to get some flowers, and I did slightly too early, and then we had a frost and they all died.
Yeah.
But I started the second the election results came out, gathering information on native herbs and plants in Ohio that can be used for a variety of things, of course, including birth. But also what kind of native food items grow better. And so like I'm gonna have a nice little garden outside my house this summer to kind of add into that, because it also saves me money, because I'm gonna spend $20 on potting supplies and $5 on a bunch of different seeds, and then I have food and I can freeze it and I can can it and I can do all these things, because it's gonna be cheaper in the long run to grow my own carrots, potatoes, and tomatoes.
Well, and heirloom seeds, as long as you can get them, try it out.
There is a website, and I wish I knew what it was off the top of my head.
Well, once you look it up, we'll put it in the comments.
Yes, but you can actually, they'll give you up to 5 seed packets, I believe, for 3 or 5 seed packets for free.
Nice.
But it has like any sort of variety of seeds that you could imagine, and they're donation based, and they do like ask that you do like $1 for like free seed packets. But if you truly can't afford to donate, they do allow for a few free ones to be sent. But yeah, so that you can just have these seeds sent to you, and you can grow. So say there's no zucchini seeds in any stores near you, you can get seeds sent to you.
Right.
And don't just grow your vegetables and fruits either. Grow native plants that are good for the native wildlife. We have such a decrease in the bee population, which is also a big issue. I know a lot of people joke on the Bee Movie, because it's a really bad movie. Yeah. But that is what will happen if all the bees die. We will not have any green, no flowers, no nothing. We need bees to survive. So plant things for pollinators, butterfly plants. If we have to switch to more of a community garden style way of living, like we can do that. It's going to be a huge change because we're used to processed foods. We're used to being able to go to McDonald's and get a whole meal for $4 or $5. But we can do it. It's going to be hard, but I'm happy to see there are people lending that hand down to be like, oh, you've fallen for the first time ever. I'm going to help you up. I'm going to laugh at you while I'm helping you up. I'm going to help you up.
Well, I think I'm kind of in that generation because, you know, and that's why I'm also, in a way, lending resources, because I got to see the canning and all that. Like, I grew up in a farming community. Whenever I was small, we butchered our own animals. You know, we had even, like, our grapevine even, that we would even make jellies and all that. I think the only thing we really went to the store for when I was really young would have been maybe sugar and flour. Most of the other things we could take care of on our own. And it's sort of a lost art. Like, there aren't a lot of people, even of my generation, that still got to witness that. Luckily for me, I did. And I'm, you know, happy to share.
The reason I could break down a chicken is because I watch a lot of Gordon Ramsay.
Okay.
That's the only reason I know how to break down chicken. And I'm not even confident I could do it. I just think I can. I've never actually done it. Can I butcher anything? No. The cow? No. I don't know what you're supposed to cut. I don't know where you're supposed to cut. I got a pet for the first time ever like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm still working on raising that.
Congratulations on your pet.
Thank you. She's a little cat. She's very cute.
Okay.
But I wouldn't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. But I grew up in a family that gardened a lot, and I know how to grow vegetables. I know how to like tend to a garden. And I also grew up with a mom who was very like open to holistic practices for different medications. So like I know a lot of uses for different herbs. I know how to use like mint and ginger for nausea, like lavender chamomile for sleep aids. Like there's a lot of things that like I know is like natural remedies for things that like, oh, I'm like, oh, okay, this person has like a sore throat. Okay, like we're gonna get you like lemon, lavender, honey tea. You just, like you'll drink that, soothes the throat. So it's like more of like a holistic side of things, which a lot of people is also like they don't know. I know how to can because my mom did it. Yeah, because she enjoyed it. My dad grew up on a farm, but like he didn't teach us any of that stuff because we didn't grow up on it. We grew up in more of it was a farm adjacent village. So there were farmers, but they were not in the village.
Yeah, I come from a pretty strong farming community still, and yeah, it's kind of a lost art. I think it's important for people, you know, if you're curious, reach out to farmers. I don't want to say for everyone because I don't know, but I would say at least the farmers in my area, they'd probably be thrilled that you want to know. They'd probably just stop everything they're doing and be like, okay, well, what do you want to know? And you probably wouldn't be able to get rid of them because they'd be talking your leg off. Like my grandpa was very much one of those people. And apparently I have also inherited the gift of gab, or I would not be doing this. So, yeah, no, it's great. And we just have to help people.
Yeah.
I mean, especially people in the autistic community, the neurodiverse community, for all these people that would tell them, oh, you know, you're not worthy, you can't do anything, you don't know how to do anything. Like, you don't even have to speak to learn how to garden.
No.
Like, there are things you can do that you don't even have to speak. And then there's that whole element of what is soothing to the soul, right? Like, being out in nature, working with your hands, working in the soil. Like, these are things that if you have autistic children, these are things you can teach them.
It's textures. That is a sensory experience. And to be fair, some kids with autism, some people with autism, dirt is a very unpleasant texture. I am not someone who enjoys that for sensory stuff. It gets under my nails. It's a weird texture. So I'm not someone who enjoyed gardening and being outside and doing that as a kid.
Yeah.
My brother, who is not autistic, loved it though. He loved being outside with my mom and helping in like the dirt. So even your like neurotypical kids, it's also great for them because all kids are sensory seeking. Autistic kids just tend to be a little bit more sensory seeking, and we're going to seek out textures that are like pleasant to us.
Yeah.
And we do avoid like our adverse textures.
Well, and you know, it's just important to try, right? Like, not everything's going to work. Not everybody's the same. Autistic, you know, children and adults, like, I'm not saying everything's going to work for everybody, but people need to at least have options.
Yeah, like you said, I think that your kids do ADA, and it's been really beneficial for them.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah, I like know that ABA it would not have worked for me.
Yeah.
Because the way a lot of ABA works, well, the way a lot of the more poorly run ABA facilities work is rather than trying to teach how to cope and how to kind of thrive as an autistic person, they more want to teach how to hide your autism. And like, my friend worked at a ABA therapy place in California last year, and she said that she was told to force the kids to stop stimming if they started stimming. They weren't supposed to do that because that wasn't like regulatory behavior. Or if they wanted to do parallel play, which I'm a huge fan of parallel play. I think it is a really valid form of play. It is still interacting with someone. You just don't technically want to do it with them, but next to them. It's still playing with someone. If she was doing parallel play with a kid, she was told that she needed to correct the child and force him to interact with her. And it would cause a meltdown because it's not what he wanted, it's not what he needed. And so those are more of the really poorly run. ABA can be beneficial if it's done right, if it's done to help, like, encourage someone to live their best life as someone with autism and not to let it hold them back. But there's some people who just like take it in such a wrong direction rather than doing both like positive and negative reinforcement and punishment. It's very much just a negative punishment, negative reinforcement. Like, I would just tell you everything you do is wrong. And that was already a lot of what I faced growing up, and why I developed such a strong mask is because it was like, well, you do this and you shouldn't. Well, you do this and you shouldn't. You do that and you shouldn't. And I felt these social punishments of not knowing these things, so I had to correct them that way. I think if the same thing would have been, if I would have been in a situation like the place where my friend worked, it would have taken a lot more undoing later on in life to kind of figure out that stimming is okay and safe, and most people stim. It just does something a little different for you when you have neurodivergence. It allows your body to regulate. Whereas like, you see someone just like fidgeting with their hands and like you're nervous, you're like, oh, like wringing your wrists before like a big presentation. That's technically stimming. Like, neurotypical people do it. But like, so it worked for you when you're kids. Wouldn't have worked for me, and it didn't work for me when like they tried. Like the different things, and like, oh, you need to do this to fit in. Da, 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 da. No, don't read your book in class. You need to be like focused and in class and not like disassociating by reading. I finished your classwork an hour ago. I'm not sitting here doing nothing.
I mean, all that is interesting to me, really, because for us, ABA has worked, but I will say, and it is the only place my kids have been to, those people treat my kids like family. They
That's
really,
important.
like, there's no restraining them at all. And I know we were going to speak about that too, so I'll let you speak about that. But every single day, whenever my kids get there, they're excited to get there. The people that take them, whichever therapist they have for the day, they're excited to see them.
That's
And
fantastic.
you can see it. Like, they are developing like individual relationships with these people. And honestly, like, sometimes it makes me tear up because nobody else visits my kids. You know, and even if it's a therapist, they have a good relationship with something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's incredible that you're able to find a place where not only are the staff like really welcoming and like great with your kids are excited to be there. Because yeah, I had mentioned I worked in children's behavioral health for a lot of years, including I worked in residential facilities for 5 years, I believe, and then I worked in a behavioral health school for 1.5, so almost 7 years. I trained a lot of kids in those times. And as traumatic as it was for me, I can only imagine how traumatic it was for the kids. The first ever restraint that I ever did on a kid, I cried during. We had to hold him down on the floor because he was harming people and himself, and so we had to hold him down. And I cried the whole time. And I wasn't crying because he was hurting me. I wasn't crying because he was calling me names. I was crying because I was holding a child down. And that's something that doesn't leave you. And it only kind of gets worse the more you do it. You're always like, you stop crying eventually. That something always feels wrong. Something always feels off. And I tried really hard to make it so that if I ever was in situations where kids were needing to be restrained or I had to restrain someone, we got out of restraints very quickly because I did a lot of verbal de-escalation and found certain techniques that worked to talk people down from that ledge, to be able to kind of calm them down enough that we could let go. Unfortunately, certain environments don't like when people do that. They like for different kinds of restraint methods, they don't want you talking to the person being restrained at all until they're calm. I personally don't think that works. I think that if talking and distraction will calm them down enough so they can be released faster, we should do that. But those are more like qualms I had with individual places that didn't allow that. But restraining kids is awful. I was trained in 3 different methods of restraint. I've been trained in TCI, CPI, and AGES. Yeah, that's what it's called, I think. Not a fan of any of them. They all have like different methods that are similar but restraint, but all of them are awful. There's a high likelihood of kids getting hurt in them and adults getting hurt, but it just traumatizes the kids further. If I've had meltdowns, I've had very, very bad meltdowns, and prior to knowing what my diagnosis was, we just called those like the worst of my worst anxiety attacks. But they would feel different, and I knew they were different because my coping skills for getting through anxiety and an anxiety attack didn't work. I wanted to break things. I wanted to throw things. I wanted something else. And I've learned through working with different therapists and realizing that it was a meltdown versus an anxiety attack. That's because I was needing a different sort of sensory input or output. And that happened to be like crushing something or breaking something, like ripping apart paper. And that does help regulate me in those moments. But they've been extremely intense before. And I can only imagine if someone were to have come up and tried to restrain me because I was throwing something against a wall. It would have escalated me times 10. And then I'm being held and like held down. That would not have helped.
I don't think it helps either. I mean, I had a child, my older one, that he had self-injurious behavior. And tried the whole gamut before I really even understood what was going on. But I could tell you, holding him down in any variety of ways just is not helpful. And then the aftermath. Mm-hmm. The aftermath is awful. And I don't think I would like it either. But, you know, as a child, I think that I learned to mask very, very well. And probably the anxiety and all that stuff that comes with it. Had I known when I was younger and had people taught me a better way, even though I think I handle things very well, but it's all internal. Mm-hmm. And it's exhausting. And so if I have something happen that maybe nobody else sees but is happening internally, it puts me out for a couple days. Like I'm still operating, I'm still doing my job or whatever, but like,
we call it autistic burnout.
Right.
It's drastically different than like a burnout you'd experience at work. It is that feeling of like eventually you literally can't be in person for a few days.
Yeah, I'm sort of like a shell. I mean, I can do the things I need to do, but I'm exhausted afterwards.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people will say, oh, like my social battery has run out. Yeah, I no longer have one. If I see a person, I will scream. If I've gone to the point where I've pushed past and I've gone into burnout and I've continued pushing and I've done nothing to try and help myself at that point because I have things I need to do, because I have responsibilities, I am more prone to meltdowns. They're not as big. I have found ways to kind of realize when one is coming on. And, you know, there's different ways that work for different people to kind of bring you back down to regulate. Yeah. But, like, I don't want to experience meltdowns. They're not fun. Mm-hmm. They're not. No one wants to do that when it's happening. Mm-hmm. But sometimes things just, I'm not great with change. Mm-hmm. So things start changing and I start getting really panicky and I do a lot of end of the world kind of thinking, worst case scenario thinking, the what ifs, the questioning the unknown, and I just kind of spiral. But it starts even as a kid. A lot of kids who are finding out they're autistic later in life, like I am, we were in the gifted classes growing up, which I have most of my friend group is autistic or neurodivergent in some sense of the word. Most of us were in gifted classes because it was being in a gifted class was also being in special education, because we were getting special education. You just were on the opposite end of what the other students were being pulled out of class for.
Oh yeah, I was definitely an overachiever for sure.
Oh, my mom had me reading before my brother was born. My brother is only like a year and 8 months younger than me. I was reading the alphabet in her border in her labor ward. When she was having contractions with my brother, I was counting the seconds between her contractions for her. I wasn't even 2 yet. I was reading, doing addition, subtraction, working on multiplication by the time I entered kindergarten. We wonder why I didn't get tested, because someone really should have been like, wow, that's crazy. It's because women and girls present very differently, in the same reason that most women with ADHD never go diagnosed. Because we don't present as a 7-year-old boy who's running up and out of their seat and going crazy and up and down off the walls, because that's not how ADHD presents in women.
Interesting. That's funny that you mentioned that, because there's a picture of me as a child, and I couldn't have been more than 4. And it's pretty typical for my age group, but they just put a quilt on the concrete garage floor, and the garage door is up, and we had what type of dog was that? I can't remember, but tiny dog next to me, and yeah, I'm just sitting there with like a pile of books around me. And I definitely wasn't in school yet.
We used to do because I grew up near an Air Force base before we moved to Ohio after my dad retired. We did bi-weekly trips to the library, because there were story times at different libraries. So we had to go to all of them. Once we moved to the town I grew up in and we got library cards, we had limit restrictions. We were only allowed to go to the library once a week, because I wouldn't be bringing a tote bag full of books home and then returning them and trying to get another tote bag full within the same week. And my parents had to be like, we're putting a limit on you, because you can't go to the library every day and get 7 new books. Because I used to just consume books like that. That's how I got through middle school and a lot of high school. Was I didn't pay attention to class. I didn't need to pay attention to class. I was absorbing it all either auditory or I had read everything. So I would just read books in class, and it got to the point that, in middle school, my teachers just, knew that I was reading. They had to, leave sub-notes that said, if she's reading, just leave her alone. She's either done all the work or she knows it all. Don't bother her. Don't try to take her book away, because it's not going to end well.
I don't know if you're this age, but when I was a kid, they had the little personal pan pizzas from Pizza Hut that you could read however many books to get the points. You did that too? Oh, I loved that. I just burned through books because it was cool. That was one of my first jobs, really. I could do this in exchange for that. And so now that I know that I'm autistic, it makes perfect sense, because in my brain, I was like, wow.
It's called hyperlexia.
Cool. Well, so didn't know that then, but at the time, I became sort of like a business person for myself. Because it was like, great, I not like we had a ton of money, but I thought, if I want to do something for myself, and if I want to be in control of this thing, A plus B equals C. And I think my brain was set up very early on that way. And so the way that I process information is like that now, even. I've got plan A through Z in my head already. So when I'm meeting people, I'm evaluating the situation. I know where all the exits are. My brain is just set up that way.
Yep.
And it's just all right, well, if this doesn't work, then that will work. And if that doesn't work, then this will work. My thing right now, as far as trying to control situations or protect my space, is who am I going to let in that space? Not everyone. We don't have a choice for everyone, right? But I'm noticing, at least, and probably more so since that diagnosis, is to not feel so exhausted. There are certain people that I can't be around, and if I have to be around them, it's in small doses.
Yep. Yeah. I will say I'm normally pretty good at regulating my, at least social capacity. The only times that it really takes a lot out of me is when I do my games.
Yeah.
Because that's normally it's between 2 days, but sometimes it'll be 1 day and 5 to 6 days. And you're never alone. There's never time to just decompress and do what I need to do to like be able to be around people. So when I leave those, I need a solid 2 to 3 days of no plans, no like big interactions with my friends. Like I can do stuff with phone, but even then, like the first day and a half, despite the fact that they've just given me my phone back after not having access to it for 5 days,
right.
I won't touch it. I'm like, I cannot people currently. Or like one of my best friend flew out from California to surprise me for my birthday this past week, and she stayed with me for 5 days, and I absolutely loved it. But like yesterday I was like, oh, okay, we have to not be around people. I tried working in the office, and I went, nope, I can hear everything, and I need to not hear everything, so I'm gonna go home and work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much devoting all my attention to these type of things, to advocacy and activism and all that right now, because I think it's necessary. But, you know, that comes with its downside. I take in so much information that is often not happy information. And I am taking it in, churning it, spitting it back out, and that takes an enormous amount of energy. And I have to limit myself with things like with articles or screen time or social media or whatever. I might churn out 5 or 6 different social media posts because I'm like, these are good. I'm going to reformat, push it back out, and then I put the phone down.
Yeah.
Or if I'm on the phone, then I switch gears and then I'm watching a show or something. And I was notorious for that when I was a kid. Like, I could not watch anything scary because I get nightmares. So then even into adulthood, if I watched anything scary,
You have to watch something after, and
I'd have to chase it with a cartoon that's funny so that my brain could calm down so I could sleep.
I used to have to do that. I used to avoid all sorts of scary like media. I used to hate it. Scary horror movies are my favorite genre currently nowadays. Love it. Mainly because I believe because of the pattern recognition part of my autism, because I am able to tell you every time something's gonna happen. If I've never seen the movie before, I'll sit there and be like, all right, we're about to have a jump scare. People are like, how do you know? I'm like, oh, the key changed in the music, or the music stopped, so they're trying to set up sensory wise that something will happen. And then it'll happen and everyone will jump and scream, and I'm like, I told you it was coming. Like, hello, like it's right there. Which I mean kind of puts the fun a little bit out of watching certain horror movies, because I'm like, oh, I kind of want to be scared, but I can't be scared because I know what's gonna happen. But I used to have to chase with a really bad cartoon, just like turn on Disney Channel or Cartoon Network, and I'm just like, all right, something real scary happened. I need to watch something very opposite of scary.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, can't do it. I'm gonna have nightmares. I'm gonna go to sleep, and I'm gonna be dreaming about being chased by zombies, and that's not good for anyone.
Right. Well, hey, we've covered a lot today. Is there anything that you think we did not cover that you wish to?
We covered a lot. Now,
we hit it
talked
pretty hard
about
today.
we talked about like everything I had on my list, I think, and I think we got everything on the
I think we did.
list. Yeah.
Well, the main question that I ask everybody at the end
Yes.
is, if people walk away with nothing else from this podcast besides who are you? Who is Mira? What would you tell them?
Who am I? I'm a person hoping to leave a lasting impact on the world and leave it better than when I found it. I took that from Girl Scouts, and I'll take it with me everywhere. Leave a place better than you found it. Never leave it worse. I'm a person who is going to stand strong in their identities and their labels and use them to uplift those who maybe can't stand as strong or don't have the ability to.
That's a great answer.
Also, I'm, if we want to do the more funny answer.
We can do funny? Okay.
I'm a reality TV show villain. So
You're a villain?
Yeah.
I didn't know you're a villain.
It's not a bad reputation. People like that I do it, but I get a reputation on the shows I do as being a villain because I won't say it behind people's backs. I'll say it to their face. So if I say it in a confessional, I'll also say it to their face.
Okay.
And that's, not always the way things go, because people are like, oh, like villain, like you should maybe not say that to their face because you want to like get to the end and you want them to vote for you. And I'm like, well, I don't want them to watch it later and be like, oh, she said this stuff behind my back. That's not nice. So I'll say it to their face too. And I won my first game recently.
Did you?
I did. It was a 2-day game. It's Survivor-esque, but it was indoors, and it's one friend Francis runs it. It was 13 players.
Okay.
Survivor style voting off, but like each round shifted a little bit of how the votes worked. And I won at Final Tribal with a 5-2 to 1 vote. So
Wow.
yeah. And I was not villainous in that game. It was the one time. It was one of the few times I didn't play like really villainous in a game. Yeah. So
when's your next one?
I have one filming in May.
Okay. That's exciting. Do you want to plug any of these specific games or anybody that's running them?
Oh my gosh, yeah, there's tons. So
Put them on. We'll put it in the comments.
So we'll start with the Ohio games. We'll start with the ones that I started out with. The Mole, Ohio, produced by Tim Holiday. It's hosted by Rachel and John. They're both amazing people. John also hosts and produced a few of the other Ohio games that I have done, including Columbus Survivor and Columbus Traders. Both are incredible games. Golden Gates is an original format game hosted in Ohio, similar to Big Brother. It's heaven and hell, like thematic. It's very cool. Also the Challenge Great Lakes. It's held in Michigan. It's one of the few like challenge-based games, which is they do the physical aspect of the challenge, and it was something that I really appreciated as someone who's trying to prove a lot to themselves physically, that I was able to go up there and do that. I competed in a mini final and finished it. And then Surviving Bloomington, it's actually where Mariah and I met.
Oh, really?
It's a 5-day Survivor game here in Bloomington, Indiana, out in the woods. It's run by my friend Casey. Paul and Brianne run Challenge Great Lakes. They're incredible. I'm on production for that game this summer.
Okay.
But Casey runs Surviving Bloomington. Season 8 will be filming this summer. It's an incredible game. And then, yeah, there's also Taylor down in Texas does Greenhouse Productions, and that's also really big. Like a lot of people more in the South go to that one because there's a few different hubs around the country. But yeah, absolutely incredible people. They all host these wonderful different games. I've met so many of my best friends through this community. And yeah, I've gotten a lot of different opportunities because of like doing these games.
Very cool. So when you're not working with HIV and AIDS patients,
Yes.
nonprofit, is it?
It is a nonprofit.
Right. So it's a nonprofit, AIDS and HIV. When you're not speaking
Yeah.
at the Ohio
Steakhouse.
State House,
Yeah.
when you're not doing other speaking engagements for autism and ADHD and neurodiverse activists, you are then doing these games
Yes.
everywhere in the country.
All over.
Right.
Or competing for Stonewall Sports.
Stonewall Sports. Speak about that a little bit more.
Stonewall Sports is a national LGBTQ sports organization through the Stonewall nonprofit.
That makes sense. Yeah.
They've got a bunch of different leagues. There's kickball, dodgeball, bocce ball, volleyball, darts, billiards, just so many different sports. And we hold national tournaments every single year. Last year it was in Minneapolis.
Okay.
My first time getting to play at nationals. I
Cool.
play dodgeball and kickball. So I went to nationals for their dodgeball showcase, which was for women and non-binary and femme presenting people. And then I was asked to play on one of the local Columbus teams because my best friend wasn't able to make it, and I already had the uniform for it as like a
You have
supporter.
uniforms for this?
We do. You get uniforms during the regular league season. It's just like a colored T-shirt with like the sponsors and everything on it. For nationals, you do get to, if you would like to design a jersey. And so this year, nationals is being held in Columbus, and I'm very excited. We actually have four dodgeball teams competing from Columbus this year. One of which is the team I was on last year, but because we had so many people that wanted to play on our team, it's called the Thoughties.
Okay.
Where we had so many people that wanted to play, we created a second team that I'm captaining this year at nationals called the Lil Thoughties, so that we're still like sister teams because we have that in the regular season as well. We have the Intrusive Thoughts and the Thoughts and Prayers.
Okay.
THOTS. And so we'll be having jerseys with our logo on them because we have logos for our teams. We'll be competing in mid-July
All right.
in the National Stonewall Tournament in Columbus. And it's currently kickball season now. So every Sunday we have kickball games.
So you're a very busy person.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if I told you this. Did I tell you that I run a festival?
Yes.
Right. So normally we have it in August. If you are not pre-engaged, once I get the final date, I'll let you know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then I definitely like to, I mean, any of these, I don't know if I could come to any of them, but I would definitely love to check it out.
Oh, the games are absolutely.
Really.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this stuff was going on before Mariah told me.
Yep.
But I think it's cool. It sounds cool.
Yeah, definitely connect with Mariah about more of the like Indiana-based ones because I think she knows more of them than I do. I know a lot of the Ohio ones.
But even Ohio, it's a cool new thing that I didn't know about.
Yeah, it's super fun. And we're always like drawing people in and we're just like, oh, now you're going to get addicted to playing them because it's a rush while playing and it's very emotionally intense. It's like you're on an island for 30 days, but it's just 3 days. But then like afterwards, you're going to be like, oh man, I want to do it again.
So do you think that this is something like what you do that the greater neurodiverse community would really like to know about and be part of?
Oh, absolutely. There are very few people that do this community that are not neurodiverse in some way. But this community really allowed me to unmask and be myself because it was encouraged for me to do that and like be able to like truly and authentically be yourself is what people want when you're on camera.
Yeah.
And so it's been great to kind of help break out of that mask that I had held so firmly in place for so long. And I give a lot of credit to the community for doing that.
I'm happy for you for that.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to be yourself.
Very much so.
Well, on that note, I think it's probably a good segue to just give our sayonara here to our new friend Mira because, wow, did we cover a lot today.
Yeah, we did.
Ooh, I don't know if you're interested in coming back, but I mean, if there are new developments, which I suspect there will be.
Probably.
I suspect, unfortunately. I would like for it to stop, but it doesn't seem like it's going to. So if you want to come back and, bang the drum with me another time, I'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody. We are at a pivotal point in American history. We do not have the luxury to remain silent. Programs are disappearing every day. We hope that this podcast raises awareness and sparks a sense of advocacy in you. We all can make a difference. The important thing is to start. See you next time.